In Part 2 of Module 8 on Human Resources, we turn our focus to the employment cycle. In looking at the employment cycle, we're going to look at three key parts of the HRM process, or how workplaces can actually manage human resources: the attraction, development and maintenance of quality staff. How are human resources managed? The human resource processes, or employment cycle, outlines the process for attracting, developing and maintaining a quality workforce in order to achieve organisational goals. First, organisations attract quality people to work at the organisation. This involves planning the kinds of people that you want to attract and then recruiting a pool of people and selecting that person you would think will perform best. Second, organisations develop a quality workforce through orientation activities that help to bring individuals up to speed on how things work in the organisation, through training people in any areas that might be deficient and tracking performance through performance management and appraisal systems. Third, organisations maintain a quality workforce through remuneration and benefits, or what people are paid, career planning initiatives, and finally dealing with retention and turnover. Again, I want to note that different texts will classify different HR activities under different parts of the employment cycle, but HRM does include all this range of activities. There are three parts to attracting a quality workforce: planning human resource needs, recruiting a pool of people that meet those needs, and selecting an individual from that pool who can best address those needs. Let's look at each of these points more closely. Before we begin hiring people, we need to have some idea of who we might like to hire or who we might need to hire. In order to do this, we need a plan. The purpose of HR planning is to evaluate the current human resources available to the organisation, as well as to assess what human resources might be needed in the future. First, we look at the organisation's vision and mission. Then we assess the current human resources available through conducting an HR inventory or survey of the current capabilities and skills, through a job analysis where jobs and the skills and behaviours that are needed to complete those jobs are examined. A job description sums up the skills, behaviours and responsibilities of jobs, and this should really help in the job analysis. It might also be important to consider the job specifications, which are the minimum skills and behaviours needed to perform the job. We then need to make some kind of forecast or prediction about future human resource needs of the organisation. This is a much trickier process. Essentially, the process asks, can the current human resources deliver the goals and strategies of the organisation? External conditions are also important in assessing future human resource needs. Are there laws that need to be addressed? Are there demographic changes like an ageing population that are going to impact the company? Once we have an HR plan, an organisation know where their gaps are, they can begin hiring people. Recruitment is concerned with generating a quality pool of people that have the skills, behaviours and abilities that are needed. A quality pool of people can be generated from a number of different sources, which have been outlined along with their advantages and disadvantages on the Blackboard site, so I won't go over them again here. Online recruiting, such as through websites like seek.com, have become an increasingly popular source for recruitment. Recruitment involves advertising jobs, which people put in a formal application. Some organisations are almost continually recruiting. For example, the Australian Defence Forces, and I'm sure you've seen all their ads at the movies or on television, needs to continually recruit in order to get a sufficient number of applicants to generate an appropriate pool of candidates to meet their needs. So once we have a quality pool of people or candidates, the next part of attracting a quality workforce is selecting the best person for the job. First, we need to screen the pool of applicants and reduce them down to more manageable levels. Some jobs literally get thousands of applications, so you can imagine it is very time-consuming just going through all the applications. We want any tools that we use in the selection process to be reliable and valid, so that the organisation can demonstrate the reasons why they selected a candidate and protect themselves against discrimination. Some workplaces might ask candidates to take tests such as written, behavioural or even job simulations to help the selection process. These might be conducted by an external assessment centre. Often the graduate recruitment process requires candidates to undergo a series of tests. Once the pool of applicants is reduced to a handful of people, organisations will often interview people to see whether they are suitable. When applying for jobs at universities, the interview will often be conducted by a panel of people. Some recommendations for improving the reliability and validity of interviews is to use a fixed set of questions for all the applicants, to ask behavioural questions where applicants give details of how they would behave in doing the job they're applying to do, and to use a standardised evaluation form. There are also questions that shouldn't be asked in job interviews, such as how old is the person? Are you married? What is your native language? Do you have children? Or what is your religion? Other parts of the selection process include making a reference check where individuals contact previous employers or other people that might be able to give insight into the quality of the candidate. Selection ends with offering a position to an individual. Developing a quality workforce involves managing the skills, knowledge and behaviours of the current workforce so that they can do the jobs and achieve organisational goals. After someone has been hired and they begin working at the organisation, employees need to understand the culture of the organisation as well as the rules and procedures that allow them to do their job. This process can involve socialisation, where expectations about how things work in the organisation are established. For example, how long lunch breaks are. It also involves an orientation process where employees are introduced to the work group, the organisational policies and procedures, and even the details of the job they've been hired to do. Some workplaces have a formal orientation program, while others have a much more informal process where a colleague shows them round and explains what they need to do. A key part of developing a quality workforce is through training employees to acquire new skills. With increasingly dynamic environments, frequent training is often required to address changing job requirements. Training can be general, focusing on general skills that are helpful in improving job performance in any job, like communication skills or customer service skills or mandatory legal compliance information, like sexual harassment. Training can also be specific, focusing on skills or behaviours that are needed in order to improve performance in the specific job that the person was hired to do, like analysis techniques or perhaps a new information system that's being used. There are a large range of training methods. Some involve learning through doing, like on-the-job learning, where individuals learn to do tasks through performing them. Learning through doing might also involve job rotation, where individuals rotate through a variety of jobs to develop wide experience and exposure. Some graduate positions use job rotation. Individuals also might learn while doing the job, but through referring to workbooks or manuals to guide them through the process. Some training methods involve learning through others, such as mentoring, when an experienced worker provides guidance and support, often to help develop the individual's career. We might have coaching, where an experienced worker shows individuals how to do job tasks. And we might have modelling, where experienced workers demonstrate how work is done. Apprentices are often trained using these learning from others methods. There are formal training methods, of which I'm sure as students you're all very familiar. These can be external, such as taking this unit, or they might be run internally, such as McDonald's has set up their own university. They might involve experiential exercises where individuals engage in role plays or simulations, such as might be used in training to be an astronaut. Finally, there are training methods that use technology, such as e-learning, online courses, or videos like safety videos. Finally, developing a quality workforce requires measuring or assessing performance in order to understand what needs to be developed. This is done through performance management systems and performance appraisals. Performance management systems align the goals and strategies of the organisation with the activities and tasks required of individual employees. This allows organisations to see what performance standards are being met, by whom, as well as any gaps that need addressing. The performance appraisal is a formal process for assessing an individual's job performance in terms of the outcomes such as costs, as well as behaviours. Performance appraisals often have two purposes: to evaluate past performance and as a means of developing individuals to meet future performance requirements. Traditional performance appraisals are conducted between an employee and their manager or supervisor. Other people can conduct appraisals, including peers, such as in peer reviews, subordinates that assess managers' performance, customers, for example mystery shoppers, or even self-appraisals where individuals judge their own performance. There are a lot of different ways that can be used to assess performance. including graphic rating scales or behaviourally anchored rating scales, where each rating corresponds with a relatively detailed description of the behaviours that explain why that rating was given. You can have critical incidents, where people reflect on important events and record effective and ineffective behaviours. Performance assessment may also include a written essay, where someone, usually a manager, writes written descriptions of the individual's performance. Finally, performance assessment may involve a multi-person or 360-degree feedback approach, where assessments of an individual's performance are collected from many different people. The final part of the employment cycle is maintaining a quality workforce. It's not enough to attract and develop workers with the talents to achieve high-performance results for the short term only. They must be successfully retained, nurtured and managed for long-term effectiveness. Maintaining a high-performing workforce can be influenced by pay and benefits, career development opportunities, as well as managing the movement of people within the workforce. So let's start with compensation and benefits. There's a little bit of a different terminology here, but essentially compensation and benefits refers to what individuals get paid. The ways in which people get paid for working vary a lot. So first we have a base pay, which is the basic wage or salary that employees are paid. Wages are typically paid by hour, while salaries are typically presented as a yearly or annual amount. As well as base pay, individuals might receive incentives to improve performance, such as giving people a bonus. This is more popular in the US, but not so popular in Australia. Individuals can also receive benefits that are non-monetary rewards. This might be fringe benefits, such as company cars or phones or memberships. Flexible benefits allow employees to select the benefits up to a certain value that are most meaningful to them. In setting pay rates, employers might pay based on the skills an individual can use in the job. This is called skills-based pay. Another way that employers establish how to pay is through using variable pay, where individuals get paid when they achieve certain performance outcomes, such as happens in commission jobs. Career development is important not only in attracting new employees, but keeping good employees. After all, workplaces don't really want to lose their best employees because they don't have any promotion opportunities. In a traditional career, the workplace was responsible for providing workers with a career path. Increasingly, careers do not follow this pattern, with individuals changing careers more frequently. Long term is now about 10 years rather than lifetime careers in one organisation. In careers that change frequently, the responsibility for developing a career path falls on the individual. These changing career paths are sometimes called protean careers. The final part of the employment cycle is that concerned with retention and turnover. Retention refers to keeping or retaining employees, while turnover refers to people leaving the organisation, whether by their choice or not. Essentially, this part of this employment circle refers to the movement of employees up, around, down and out of the organisation. One of the key means of retaining people is to promote them to a higher level within the organisation that offers higher pay and more responsibility and power. Transfer is when people shift to other jobs with a similar level of responsibility in a different part of the organisation. For example, a finance officer that works in one department shifting to a job as a finance officer in another department of the same organisation. Another form of movement is that of demotion, often done as part of a discipline procedure for poor performance. An example might be a policeman being demoted from detective to beat cop. Finally, employees may have their employment terminated. This can occur in different ways. It might be because the individual themselves chooses to leave or resigns from their position. It might be because the individual retires, sometimes because they have reached a certain age, or sometimes as part of an early retirement package. Employment might terminate because individuals are laid off or made redundant, which is where the workplace no longer needs that person to do the job. For example, when downsizing, if two departments are combined into one department and both have finance officers, the new department will only need one finance officer, and so the other position becomes redundant. Finally, the most extreme case of termination of employment is when an employee is dismissed or sacked, usually based on performance problems. This process needs to be managed carefully to ensure that the workplace complies with legislative protections for employees against unfair dismissal. Just to conclude this lecture, you might have noticed that HRM activities often feed into each other. This creates an employment cycle rather than an employment line. The employment cycle involves attracting quality employees, developing those employees, and then maintaining the skills, knowledge and behaviour. As people move about organisations, new people are required, and so the process begins again. This brings us to the end of part 2 of the Module 8 lecture on Human Resource Management.